Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the Awesome Friday podcast, the only podcast on the entire internet that talks about movies at all. My name is Matthew, and this week we are talking about two new films. One, I Saw the TV Glow, which just came to on demand, and another one called Daddio, which will be in the cinemas this coming week, and you should probably go see. Joining me, as always, is Simon. Say hello, Simon.
Hello, and you join us. We're 9 minutes into the Scotland-Hungary game, and the score is 0-0. Just for anyone who's interested and listening in real time somehow.
It is interesting that the Euros and the Copa America are on at the same time.
I know. I can't remember that happening before, but it's pretty great.
I feel like they must have purposefully not overlapped before, right?
Yeah.
We're not a sports podcast, but there are sports that we like, though, so you are going to put up with this probably a little bit, as you have done in previous years when the World Cup was on.
It's football, so it's real sport. Sorry, soccer. I can't speak anymore. Before Dakota comes over and actually murders me, I am really into the hockey playoffs. I've discovered that I understand hockey, and I've got my wife in hockey, and we're all watching the hockey, and we're actually really into it. So I would like that to continue into the new season whenever it starts, because it's a much easier thing to watch here for obvious reasons.
Good. I mean, hockey is just five-a-side soccer, but with sticks and a tiny ball. So
lots of aggression
and a little more, not much more aggression, but a little more aggression. You know, it's you're just not. I find it interesting. In North America, you're not penalized for that aggression. Is the problem?
So hockey, yeah, but you are penalized for overdoing injuries, which I find really interesting. That maybe they should think about bringing to football, because especially the Latin teams are like going for their Oscars a lot. They call it the dark arts, which is the psyche side of like Argentina came out almost 10 minutes later than Canada and rolling around and trying to get free kicks, and it's pretty bad, and you see it at the worst in Copa America. So it's interesting to me. But it's a great time for sports. So we've got Copa America, we've got Euro, we've got the hockey, obviously, going to 7 games. I know what I'm talking about now. And we've also got the Olympic track and field trials on quite late into the night. So my family had to gang up on me yesterday to ask me not to put any more sport on. That's great. And it's a really good thing to have passively on in the background while you do other stuff as well. So it's good times.
It is also just nice that in terms of soccer, which is a British word for the record, is Canada's playing really well. So we lost our first match, but also to the best team in the world. So, but it's interesting that it's just nice for Canada, the Canadian men's national team, to actually be a good team for maybe the first time in my lifetime.
Massively impressive.
Good World Cup appearance 2 years ago, and I guess 1 year ago. Was it 1 year or 2 years ago because of the pandemic? But anyway, they made it to the World Cup last time, and they're played really well. The day before yesterday, I think it was, and it's I mean, it's hard to fault anyone for losing to Argentina, because current defending World Cup champions, but they played really, really well. So
here's the thing with Canada: they are playing better now than they played in the World Cup. And the most depressing thing about watching Canada play Argentina was the fact that previously I just watched England play, and compared to England, we invented football, if you ask us. We are the holders of the crown of the sport. It's part of our culture, and we were fucking terrible, just so boring and so lacked in energy. And Canada came out, and you wouldn't know, there was no intimidation. Their first ever Copa America game against the World Cup holders, against the best player in the world, and they just went for it. There's so much energy and fantastic ball pass. Not all their crosses were great, especially when they got tired, but that first half, massively impressed to only lose 2-0 against Argentina. But it doesn't really tell the whole story, because they could have won that game, and that's an incredible achievement for them. So very, very excited to see the next Canada game, which I think is Tuesday against Peru.
25th is Tuesday against Peru.
Yeah.
It's one of those things too, where if I were a wealthier man, the Copa America is happening in America, and I would love to be able to, like, you know, if I had the money, I probably would try to fly to like California and watch a match or two.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because it's like, why not? You get to see the best teams in the world play. And yeah, they haven't been. Canada hasn't. Have they ever been in the Copa? I know they've like been high enough in CONCACAF to like make the World Cup, but I don't think they've ever actually played in the Copa America. So
yeah, it's the first time they've been included, and I'm hugely impressed with them.
Yeah,
much better than England. Much better playing than England. What England have, Canada don't have, is the stamina to keep their form, which is completely understandable, and they don't have the finishing power that they need. But
yeah, it's a lack of experience.
Yes, yeah, but and when you think of the soccer is the funding in Canada for soccer is much less than it is for many other things, and so they're playing really well. And they've got a their coach. It was the assistant coach for America in the last World Cup, and he clearly has got some great formation ideas with them, and spoke really positively about how they did with Argentina. So it's exciting. It's exciting for the Canada male team to have that amount of potential.
Yeah, and Alphonso Davies is also just a hell of a player.
He's good. He's really good. Yeah, and there's a guy who looks like, it's dating me, but if you remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer from the glory days of Manchester United, Canada has a young guy with curly hair who looks and plays very much like him, who was really good.
It's interesting too, because we're talking way too much about sport, but I actually thought that I didn't realize that Herdman had left the Canadian men's national team until just recently. He's now the head coach at Toronto FC, which would be a good choice. The guy has an interesting history of turning teams around, including, you know, the New Zealand women's team and the Canadian women's national team, and then Canada men's. They went to the World Cup under him, so it'll be interesting. He seems like a great coach, and I hope that he does well. And the new guy seems good too. So yeah.
Yep.
Sports. We're talking about sports on our movie podcast.
Sports are good. Sports are really good. Yes.
Yeah.
Good time. I like. Yeah.
Yeah. So we do promise, though, this is a movie podcast. We'll get there eventually. Is there anything you've seen this week you'd like to highlight other than the two we're going to talk about? Just out of for funsies, is there any other films you've watched where you're like, oh, that's a good film, I should talk about that?
That's a good point. You know, I'm going to go to my memory, which is my Letterboxd account. It's been an extremely busy week in the evenings this week. The only thing I've rewatched is 2010's Tangled with my kids, and
it's a well-regarded
really
film.
Interesting film. It's a well-regarded film because it's fantastic. And the first time I watched that movie, I didn't like it at all. And it's one of those films that I don't know if this ever happens with you, where you think you have an opinion that is kind of low, and then the film just sticks in your head, and you realize it happened with Popstar as well. Realize you want to watch it again and again and again, and every time you watch it, you're like, no, this is actually genius, especially if you compare it to the films that came around it, like Frozen, like Moana. It's got it feels a bit of like end of an era Disney in terms of the songs, in terms of the animation. Disney, I feel, has moved on from the Frozen, Moana, Tangled era, and it's incredibly vibrant, incredibly well made, and funny, and quite subversive as well, and just beautiful to look at. So it's I really recommend watching Tangled again, and the songs get right into your head. But that's what Alan Menken does. He's one of the great songwriters and composers, and
that's true.
It's a great film. It's just just gorgeous to look at as well. Beautiful.
I mean, for anyone who's wondering who Alan Menken is, you know who he is because he also is the composer and songwriter for The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Pocahontas and The Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules and Enchanted, and like so many other like Disney and classic films.
He is the person you think of when you think of the Disney music magic. It's Alan Menken. Like he is that influential, and God knows what they're going to do when he eventually moves on or passes on or whatever. Because
I mean, yeah, it's like
Miranda did more.
You don't.
They're pretty good. But
I mean, you think about all the ones that were made by someone who wasn't like, and this is a sort of a rude word, and I don't really mean it in the way it's intended, but like all the ones where the music was made by a person or duo that wasn't like a stunt cast for this particular movie. Like obviously The Lion King, amazing, amazing Elton John and Bernie Taupin music and lyrics, but they only did the one. And I think Tarzan's music by Phil Collins is actually incredible, but he only did the one. And basically all the ones that don't meet that description are Alan Menken. And they are all great. So yeah.
Menken gets the magic of it that I don't think Elton John or Phil Collins did. Like they're both excellent songwriters. Like the songs are perfectly fine in The Lion King and Tarzan. Menken, there's something about it. He understands where magic comes from in music in a way that popular songwriters don't need to know how to do that for like chart hits. It's like he's just Little Mermaid is like one of the greatest collection of musical songs ever written. Like he is right up there with anyone else you could compare him to.
I mean, he also wrote the music and the new songs for the film adaptation of Little Shop of Horrors. So if you needed more of his credentials, there you go.
Yeah. How about you? Anything you watched that we're not talking about? That's I know you've had a whole haul of birthday stuff to watch through, but anything of note that surprised you?
So I haven't really had a chance to watch any of the birthday haul except for Duel, which is an incredible film, Spielberg's first feature. For me, I have been continuing on my Kevin Costner thing. So in the last week, I have watched. Actually, let's just see what the last week is, because I've watched so much Kevin Costner stuff lately. So a week ago is the 16th. So since the 16th, I have watched Silverado, which is a great ensemble Western, like old school ensemble Western from the 80s, like a real throwback to the like 50s at the time, in which he plays the young hotshot hot-headed younger brother of Scott Glenn's character. And it's actually really interesting to watch young Kevin Costner, because he was at one point young, and I think that's the thing we kind of forget now. You know what I mean? Like he is young and vibrant and kind of the idiot kid, and it's a really fun performance. But I've also watched Mr. Brooks, which is a fun serial killer movie. I rewatched Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which would be a better film if he did anything at all to attempt an English accent. And it's such a weird mishmash of tones, but sort of works anyway because it just knows it needs to be fun. You know, it sort of fits for me in that same sort of era, although I think The Mask of Zorro is a better film overall. But it sort of fits in that same genre where it just knows it needs to be fun and nothing else. And I really enjoy it because of that. And then I rewatched Draft Day, which is a very underrated football movie. Which is, as with most of the best sports movie, not actually about the football. It's and the payoff at the end is perfect. And then I rewatched the 2014 McG directed 3 Days to Kill, which is not a good movie, not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie, and it feels like and I don't think McG is exactly a bad director, but I think in the hands of a better director that could have leaned the film more into either the action or the comedy, might have been a great film in the hands of someone with a little more focus, shall we say. So, but anyway, I'm finding this whole exercise of rewatching most of Kevin Costner's films really fascinating, because he's kind of bland, but in a way that means he can fit into basically anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it sounds like a diss, but it's actually kind of a compliment because Kevin Costner can literally be slotted into any of these films and just like become what he needs to become because he's so bland. You can, if he doesn't become it, you can just project it onto him and it works. And I sort of get that like that is maybe why he became a movie superstar because he could just be in anything and he would be good in it, even if the movie itself is bad. He like you can project. He is whatever the movie needs him to be. He doesn't seem to have any like discernible. I was going to say charisma, but he obviously does have charisma. But I think you know what I'm trying to get at here, right? Like he's not.
Yeah, I think it's really astute actually, and it's kind of something I was trying to put my finger on and failing last week. In that, even in Robin Hood, even when his accent's dodgy, he's still incredibly magnetic because he can slot into, as an actor should be. He's kind of invisible and can slot into all these things.
Yeah, and like Robin Hood, I mean, again, like it is weird that he has doesn't have a British accent, and you can sort of be like, well, he was in the Crusades and he just lost it while he was there. Fine. But like that movie doesn't need him to have a British accent because it's just a fun movie. And there's a bunch of other fun performances in it from people you have heard of and lots of people who you haven't. And, you know, it's a movie that also understands that, you know, in order to save Marion at one point, he jumps on a catapult and is catapulted over a wall. And it makes exactly no sense. But even the movie understands that and has Christian Slater say, fuck me, he cleared it. Right after. And conveniently there's like a big like a hay cart there for him to land in that they had no idea was there. This is not a movie that needs to make sense, it just needs to be fun. And and in that period in his career when he's alternating between like that was 1991 and like he's in this period in his career where he can just disappear he's still discernibly Kevin Costner and everything, but he's also such a blank slate that he can be in anything. It's a really really interesting presence that he has. And I've seen people talk about how he's sort of bland and they didn't get why he's a movie star. And my submission here is that like that's why he was a movie star, because he can just be in. Like I haven't seen him in any kind of like straight horror movie exactly, but I would kind of love to see him in that at this point, right? Like I would love to see him take on genres that require a little bit, what's the right word? A little bit maybe bigger of a performance would be the word for it. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying rewatching this his filmography, and I can't wait to tackle some of the ones that I haven't actually seen before.
Are you going to go and see Horizon Parts 1 through 3 for his American Old West masterpiece?
So Kevin Costner, if there's one genre that he's maybe closest associated with for me in my head, it is the Western, and I have been purposefully avoiding the reviews and trailers for Horizon because I just want to see a Kevin Costner Western film again. And I expect to be that guy who, as with movies like The Cable Guy and The Postman and Waterworld and a number of movies like that, I kind of expect, and Wyatt Earp is another one, I kind of expect to be the guy who like most people are like, that was fine at best, and me to be like, that was great. Like I love like it's interesting because I think he's a really interesting performer and I think he's a really interesting director. But in terms of direction, he is very clearly a guy who thinks that a longer movie is a better movie, and I kind of can't wait to see how that plays out in this originally 2, now 3, and potentially 4-part epic he's been trying to make since the 80s. So yeah, I'm actually very excited to go watch the Kevin Costner Western film, personally.
Well, marvelous.
Yeah, but that is probably too much banter. So we should probably move on to some actual films. And we're going to talk about 2 this week. We are going to talk about I Saw the TV Glow, which is now on digital, and then we're going to talk about Daddio, which will be in cinemas this week. And So
Who
let's start
wants to
with
do? Who's gonna do it?
so let's start with I saw the TV Glow, and I'm gonna give the briefest of synopses that I can. In fact, I think I might just read the like official synopsis because there's a lot. There's both a lot and nothing at all happening in this movie, and I find it kind of fascinating. But the official synopsis is that Justice Smith plays a teenager called Owen, who is a shy, introverted weirdo, and he makes friends with a slightly older girl called Maddie, and they are both fans of this TV show called The Pink Opaque, and they watch it on TV together, and then they grow up. Basically, the film starts in '96 and then shifts to '98 and then 2006 and then the mid-teens, if memory serves. And the premise of the show that they're watching is these two psychically linked teenagers fighting against a malevolent supernatural force called Mr. Melancholy, who's trying to send them to a terrible place called the what's it called? The Nightmare Realm, the Dark Realm, the something realm.
Yeah.
Um, and so they connect pretty hard. And Maddie at one point disappears for like a decade, and then she comes back and says, "We are actually the main characters of the show, and I've been in the real world in the Pink Opaque, and I need you to come with me." And that's kind of all I want to say about it, because it's already a little bit spoilery. And basically, the rest of the film is Owen is Justice Smith trying to like figure out if he's in the right world or not. I'm going to be really upfront about this. That and I believe Simon as well, are both very much in the minority about this. I did not vibe with this movie at all. It is very glacially and deliberately paced in a way that did not work for me. It is, um, I would say it's interestingly thematically both very specific and very broad in a way that I think that the filmmakers are trying to tell a very specific kind of story about a specific thing. The I think the easy and obvious read is that this is a very like trans allegory about knowing yourself and knowing your place and knowing the world. And it is also broad enough that you could also project pretty much literally anything you want onto that. Um, I think that it's very much a vibes film, and I did not vibe with it uh, at all from the beginning. And I watched it with my wife, and she made an interesting point that she said if she had been 18, she probably would have loved it. And I think that that is probably true. I think that this is the kind of movie that you are either going to bounce off entirely, like I have, um, or you are going to connect with it in a very meaningful and deep way. Uh, and I believe, and judging by the both critic reviews and letterbox reviews that I've seen, that seems to be true. Um, so my short review here of this film is that I didn't like it. I thought that Justice Smith was weirdly kind of bad, although probably giving exactly the performance he was asked for. I think that Bridget Lundy-Paine, who plays Maddie, is actually quite good, um, especially as they are required to play the same character from the ages of about 14 to 28 or 29, however old they are in real life. But also, I did not like this movie. It's too slow. It's too, the polite word would be deliberate, but the word I'm going to use is glacially paced. And again, a little bit too broad to be interesting. It's beautifully shot. There's a lot of really interesting color choices, a lot of really interesting cinematography, a lot of really interesting like uh, reflections on how the media we consume can shape us and give us meaning and find connection. Like as a film and TV nerd, like the story of a nerdy loner who gloms on to a TV show that no one else likes. Like that's me in the '90s with Babylon 5, man. Like I should connect to this in a way that many people are. Um, but I just didn't. It's not enough. It is like a 90-minute movie, 96-minute movie, and there's about 60 minutes worth of material there, if we're being generous. Like, it feels to me like a short film that's been stretched into a feature. It feels to me, um, I want to say, a student film is maybe too mean, but it does very much feel like a film that is a little bit too basic and a little bit too broad for me to connect with personally. But again, that being said, I think that if you do connect with this film, it is going to be, it could be a defining film for lots of people. So my recommendation is that I don't like it, but you should probably see it. And again, I think that the sort of audience reviews and letterbox reviews and critic reviews bear that out. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm landing with this. How did you feel, Simon? I think similarly.
I think when it comes to the star choice, I think I officially liked it less than you. Even like I thought it was just a pretentious wash of nothing. Like I was a drama teacher for 6 years, and in that time, I watched. I was teaching college for us, so 16 to 18, and there's lots of opportunities for them to write, and direct, and act in their own plays, and then I had to watch them in their first year and give feedback on. Okay, you've still got to think about the audience, his story structure, and it can't just be your important themes and nothing else. And this really made me feel like that again. Like it's so it's so
So
opaque.
like a student film is what you're saying.
Well, I've seen much better student films. Like technically, the only thing I want to say positive about this film is that visually it was interesting with the colors and cinematography, everything you just said. I think technically, for everything else is a mess, and it's glacial to the point of like nails on a chalkboard for 100 minutes, and it's so obscure. Its themes are so open and scattershot. Like I can completely, if you watch this and see yourself represented in this, if you project your thing you're going through into this, it allows you to project any allegory you want into it because it's just so obscure and open. And so I think that must be the only reason why some people are like, this changed me. I feel I can be my confident self after this movie. And I think many of these reviews are gifting this film the depth and richness that it completely lacks itself. And as someone who didn't project anything I'm going through into this movie, again, I think if you're 14 to 16 and going through stuff, this might be a film that gives you an opportunity to frame what you're going through, but you're reading that into this film. Like this film is not a film that does any of this itself. Kind of annoyed me a bit in that way. It was almost knowingly, openly obscure to appeal to as many different things as possible that people might want to relate to it. And by the time it finished, I was just almost at a loss as to what it was even trying to achieve. Like it goes beyond obscure. It's almost like a late night, like a flash channel on the internet that just shows random images of horrific images and horrific ideas. And the acting is not good. The script is not good. The direction of the script is not good. And I think it's unfortunate because a lot of people are seeing something in this film that helps them with themselves. So that's a positive, and that should always be something that art helps us do. But as a film by itself, I just think it's an almost complete failure. Like I didn't like it at all.
Yeah,
Really pretentious.
You definitely didn't like it as much as I did, but I also didn't like it. So I'm sure we're going to be debating a little bit pedantically here. Yeah. I will say that its primary theme, and as I mentioned before, I think you're right. I think it's broad enough for you to project basically any inner turmoil onto it. That being said, I do think that like the very obvious trans allegory, it's a little bit spoilery, but like the show they watch is about two, like the Pink Opaque, the show they watch in the movie is about two young women, and Justice Smith is at one point is told that he is one of these two young women. So like, and he he makes some interesting but not successful, I would argue, choices about how he acts in the film, in particular with his voice, that I think are trying to play into that theme. Like, I think that there is a central theme. I do think it's also so glacially paced as to be not interesting, or I don't know. I just could not connect with it, like, at all. And like, I'm not. It's not because it's a trans theme. It's just because like there's so little there. Like, I think that the
You
theme of
compare
like know thyself is an important one, and that I've connected with in many films before. And this is just not one that has it.
well, on that
You're trying.
specific note. You compare this. Sorry, it just occurred to me. If you compare this to the what was that Joker film we saw? What was it called?
Oh, the
The
People's Joker.
documentary.
Yeah, the
People
People's
compare
Joker.
that to People's Joker, which is a film about trans issues, which is entirely successful. One of my
Yeah,
favorite films of the year. And this film does absolutely nothing to develop. It's like, oh, it might be a trans issue, but we're not going to develop it. It might be a gay issue. It might be overbearing stepfather issue. It might be a lonely issue. It might be this social anxiety issue. It doesn't dare to develop any of it in any substantial way at all. It's just super pretentious.
yeah. Um, Again, like, I'm just gonna just say what I always say. I'm fully on team see it for yourself. This film is very much resonating for lots of people. Um, I actually don't have that much more to say about it because I didn't like it. It didn't.
Yeah.
It's very much a vibes movie, and like, if you vibe with it, you're gonna vibe with it hard, and I did not. And if you do that, then I'm glad. I'm very, very happy this movie is finding its audience. I'm I'm at a point where I'm 100% saying I didn't like this movie, but I think you should probably see it, because the people who are going to connect with it are connecting with it in deep and meaningful ways, and I just didn't. Um, so do with that what you will. It makes me want to add like a thing for when we give like bad review, when we give low ratings to films. I kind of want to like add a tagline that says like, "But see it for yourself," because like, again, so many people are connecting. It feels weird. I feel like the entire world has seen a different film than I did, and they're all connecting with it very deeply. And lots of people I know are talking about it as like one of the best of the year, and I'm just like, what? I don't how like why like maybe I'm not going through enough stuff right now for it to be meaningful, which is a weird thing to say in our current capitalist economic hellscape. But it didn't work for me, like, at all.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm glad it's working for lots of people. So
Yeah.
take
I think
that
it's
away
great.
as a positive. I'm very glad it's found its audience, and I'm not a part of it.
I think that's very well put. And usually we always say, watch something for yourself, even if we one star it, watch it for yourself. And usually we mean that because you might react to the artistic content differently. But here, I'm very specifically, I think you should watch it yourself if you're in your teens and going through something that you want a bit of clarity on. Some people are seeing things in this film that help them, and so for you, this might help you. It's not a good film, but it might help you. But after you've watched this movie, if you are going through things that question the kind of things that it might bring up, go and watch People's Joker, which will help you, which is a
Hmm.
far better movie and is far more insightful, and you will feel much better after watching that film.
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the letterbox reviews, and I think my favorite one is a 4-star review from a that's just it was single sentence, says Donnie Darko, but for they thems, and that's pretty on point, actually.
No, no,
Donnie
it's not
Darko
on point.
is a better film, but
Donnie Darko is a technical masterpiece of a film.
I mean, I get it from a thematic point of view, though. Like it's trying for me, it's failing, but it's trying to explore some of the same kinds of stuff, and the vibe especially is very similar. But again, it just didn't like work for me. So
Mm-hmm. How many stars are you going with here?
I'll give it 2, mostly for the cinematography, and for the again, I think visually it's very, very interesting, and I do like Bridget Lundy-Paine. I think that they are an interesting young performer. It's it's also the first time I've seen a movie with Justice Smith where I was like, oh, really? Like that's he's a person who I very much I'm always like, oh, Justice Smith is in this. I'm going to enjoy at least part of it, and I did not enjoy him in this at all. So yeah, 2. It takes a lot for me to go below 2, I think, as you're aware, and this is not Ghosted bad. So it's
Is that your yardstick?
I mean, pretty much like this. I'll say this. This film is. I disagree that it's nothing. I think that it is at least trying to be something, whereas Ghosted is not trying to be anything, and I think that's an important distinction. I think trying and failing is better than not trying at all, and this film is at least trying. For me, it's failing, but it is at least trying to be something. And there's lots of films that are just like not, and so yeah, 2 stars. 2 stars for trying and for being pretty, basically. You? I'm hearing a 1. I'm hearing a 1 from you.
What Ghosted isn't is pretentious, and this film is massively pretentious, and that's a thing for me. So this is 1 star. Like I really disliked the experience of trying to watch this entire film.
I would say that in order to be pretentious, you again have to try to be anything at all, and Ghosted does not. But that's we've already done that podcast, so let's just not go down that road. I don't want to talk about a shitty movie again. It's a real shame, and again we're very much in the minority on this, so definitely see it for yourself. But we did not vibe with this movie, so there you go. That's maybe the fastest movie conversation we've had in a minute.
It's a hard film to talk about anyway, and also neither of us really want to talk about it. So I think indicative as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's stuff in it that, like, again, if you're going to vibe with this movie, you're going to vibe with it pretty hard. And there's stuff in it that I would rather. I don't think anything I've said is very, very spoiled. I mean, I've saw like a couple of plot points through maybe into the second act a little bit, but like, there's stuff in it that I wouldn't want to spoil. And I do think there's some creative things in it. And again, like, if you don't vibe with that, then it's not going to work. And I didn't vibe with it. So, but like, again, definitely see it for yourself. Is my review. I didn't like it. Go see it. Is my review, basically. But let's move on. So our next film is coming out in cinemas this coming week, and it is the single location acting. I don't know if I want to go so far today as to say tour de force, but like acting showcase for Dakota Johnson and Sean Penn called Daddio. And Simon, why don't you take us through the very basics of Daddio?
Yeah, this won't take long at all. So a girl gets a taxi.
Yeah.
A cab. She arrives at an airport and she gets the next cab in line, and they go en route to her location where she lives in New York. And during that journey, which is shot in real time, which I really liked, the hour-and-a-half journey, she and the taxi driver, Clark, played by Sean Penn, have what starts as a friendly, open conversation gets more and more into each other's personal lives, as these two handlers usually do, until revelations come out and they sort of help each other through, especially him with her issues. She's in a romantic situation that is perhaps not something that she's been realistic about, and Sean Penn is a very ultra New York realistic, been there, done that. Here's how it is. Very brash. And if you've seen it's a play that was adapted by the playwright for the screen and directed brilliantly, I think. And if you've seen this kind of two-hander before, where strangers open up to each other and then there's a big final revelation and ends with them being friends, like you've seen this. It's very formulaic in that sense, but it's a very good version of that. Like, Dakota Johnson is not an actor that I've been wowed by before in much. I think she's fine usually. she's good in this. She's really, really good. And Sean Penn this is a great reminder of he is one of the great screen actors. And they work really well together, and they're shot really well together. It's some very intelligent direction, and some. It's not rushed as well, but it has good pace, which is a difficult balance to get in a two-hander. And it's good. It's really, really good. I think there's some weird directorial choices that I would perhaps like to learn more about that didn't quite vibe with me, but for the most part, it's a very good piece of theatre, directed very well.
I mean, yeah, I agree with basically everything you're saying. It's interesting to me that like, so this was originally written as a play and then just immediately turned into a screenplay instead. Like, never actually been staged, as far as I know. And I think that's an interesting choice. I would love to see a stage version of this, of just like two people on stage talking. I think would be amazing. I think that both people in this, I was gonna say everyone, both people in this movie are excellent. I think Dakota Johnson is one that like, when she is on point, when she is in something she clearly like loves and is committed to, I think that she is an incredible performer. And this is definitely one of those. You know, on par with her appearances in Luca Guadagnino films, and even my wife and I watched that Am I Okay recently, which is a film that took a long time to get to streaming for some reason. And she's really good in that too, and she's really good in this. And I think she's the kind of performer that like it's easy to like say, you know, she was the woman in 50 Shades or she was the woman in Madam Web this year, but she's also one of those performers where she does those films so that she can do these films. In the same way that like Natalie Portman was in 3 shitty Star Wars films so that she could do, you know, Black Swan and V for Vendetta and stuff like that. You know, like she's very pragmatic with her choices, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you're a person who like writes off films with Dakota Johnson because she's been in a bunch of bad stuff, you should go and watch a bunch of her good stuff because she's really, really good in this film. And she holds her own against, you know, 2-time Academy Award winner, long-time, you know, best in the conversation for best of a generation actor, Sean Penn, who plays the saltiest, most, you know, it sounds like a cliche, but the saltiest, most down-to-earth, working class, kind of asshole, but lovable asshole that you've seen in a film in a long time. And with a lot of like, and they talk about just everything and nothing, and it's sort of a wonderful conversation just to watch and experience. And when it gets to the point where they're talking about experiences that they both had or related experiences, and you know, as they go on, it gets more open and more honest and more vulnerable until they probably shared more than you have with some of your closest friends. It's just sort of wonderful to watch. And there's a couple of nice little payoffs at the end just from like the conversations that they've had. And you end with a place where like her situation is obviously not, I wouldn't even say it's unhealthy. I would say that her romantic situation is toxic, and her watching her perspective change on that through the conversation she's having with him. Their third character in the film is the man she's seeing, who we only interact with via text, and
who is the worst.
Who is he's like the worst. Like, but watching most of, or at least a lot of what you can get of how her perception of her relationship is changing is through her like facial expressions and body language, and that is a very difficult thing to do. So if I think this is, I hesitate to say that this is one of the best movies of the year, but it is one of the best movies I have seen so far this year in terms of like just raw performance. And I hope that it makes a big splash in its when it's in cinemas this week. You know, for those of you out there who are like, where are all the movies for adults? Well, this is one of them, and it's going to be in cinemas on the 28th. So go fucking see it, please, because we need more of these and more films like it, and more like middle tier performance showcases, and this is one of them. And you can go watch it like this week. So please go do that. Because it's great. I can't wait to watch it again. Actually, which is something I don't say a whole lot, but I cannot wait to watch it a second and third time because it is great.
I really liked something I was worried about actually when I was researching the film before I watched it was that it's set entirely in this taxi cab as they make this journey, and apart from a few exterior establishing shots, the whole thing's filmed in a soundstage with virtual backgrounds. And I've had we've seen some other things using virtual backgrounds that I think look terrible recently, and so I was quite worried that it would be distracting to have like comedy driving with like the projector background. But it's actually done really, really, really well. Like I think the key part is the how busy it is, and also it matches the movements of whatever he's doing with the steering wheel, which I think was a very clever, small idea. The lighting is very, very good in this film, and that it matches what it feels like you're in the nighttime scene of driving through New York. So the whole thing's directed really well. As basically the two people sat in the same seat for an hour and a half talking to each other. It's incredibly difficult to direct, and there's a really nice mix of like close-up body shots, face shots, and also the camera pulls back for a large chunk over Sean Penn's shoulder as he's talking to her. And some really, really intelligent direction. I would really recommend this film for anyone who's taking any kind of film studies or film directing course to get an idea of the shots she uses to film that dialogue. It's very, very intelligent. I can't wait to see what she directs next. You know, I think this is a very, very good indication that we might see some more special things from her.
Yeah, I mean, sticking on the virtual backgrounds for the moment, I think one of the smart things it really does is that the virtual background is always kind of out of focus. Like the interior of the cab is shot. It's a very shallow focus, like they're in focus and the background isn't, which I think helps. But also, it's an easy reality to mimic too, because like they spend most of the film stuck in traffic, so it's not like the background is moving that much. Like there's stuff happening. There's obviously other cars and whatever, but like it's not like having to recreate the city on the fly as a backdrop you need to see. It's just the focus remains entirely inside the cab. So I think it's a very well deployed special effect. I will also say that like you're not wrong. This is Christy. We talked in the bonus show this week about like favorite directorial debuts, and like as a directorial debut goes, this is one of the most exciting ones of the year. I think for sure. This is the Christy Hall's first ever feature, and again, you're right. I can't wait to see what she does next. And I think an interesting thing about this film is that we've talked before about films, and I think this came up probably most recently, unless I'm mistaken, when we talked about the movie Poor Things, which is a film that purports to be that lots of people love, but a film that purports to be very feminist. That I was like, really, maybe a woman should have taken a go at the script, you know? And this is that film. This is a film where Sean Penn's character Clark is a douchebag, a generously, mildly misogynistic douchebag who, if this film was directed by a man, would probably be like a candidate for cancellation, to use the vernacular of the time. But in the hands of a woman screenwriter and a woman director, you get that he's terrible. You get that he's not like the best person. But it's a far more nuanced characterization, a far more nuanced direction, to the point where he's kind of an asshole that you like, and that no one's gonna like cancel this guy, right? Like no one's what I'm trying to say is that like it's a lot more sensitive, despite him being very brash and very open and kind of an asshole. It's also very sensitive to the issues that are being discussed in a way that if a man had written this, I just don't think it would have been. And I just don't think it would have been as good. I think it would have been far more one-sided. And you could argue this film is fairly one-sided in that like the main focus of most of the conversations is the girl. but it is not one-sided in its like um, themes or in its empathy in a way that I feel like it would be with certainly at least with a lesser director. Like I think that this film really strikes that balance in an interesting way, and yeah, I can't wait to see what Christy Hall does next. And I hope that again, everyone, both people in this movie are remembered when it comes time for, maybe not the Oscars, but certainly for like the Independent Spirit Awards or the Gothams, the mid-tier artsy awards. I think this is a pretty shoe-in candidate for those.
Penn finds a really good balance as well, and I'm sure that's in coordination with the direction and the script, in that he is an asshole. He is a
Misogynist.
Oh my god, I need tea. But he's also, they find that balance of turning him into the guy you would call if you had a problem in New York. Like, you would have him on speed dial because you know exactly who he is and he's exactly honest with you at all times. And I think that's why this film
works a good way
really,
to put
really
it.
well. This film works really, really well because you got someone so brash who is so daring in how he talks to her. I texted you at the beginning when I was watching the beginning of this film. I would love a woman's perspective on this, although it's directed and written by a woman, so I trust that it's fine. And that there's moments in the first 20 minutes of this movie where he kind of steps over the line of familiarity with how he speaks to her, and she also sort of reacts to him more flirtatiously. And I kind of was wondering, is this a little too much? Is this too flirtatious? If I were a girl in this taxi, would I want to get out immediately and run away? Because it feels kind of creepy in the first 20 minutes before they find their rapport. Because I'm always interested in these two-handers. I've seen many, many versions of this story, a two-hander, man or a woman. And I love listening to how the conversation goes from friendly to personal, how the doors start opening. I think that's the intelligent part of script writing I really love, is that slow curve into familiarity. And if I had a dink with this film, I would say it goes a little too fast into familiarity because he is so brash with her and so forward with her in the first 20 minutes. And that I was wondering, if I were a woman in that situation, would I actually start looking for the door handle? But once they find their rapport, it's fine. But that's
so. I will say, and obviously I cannot offer a woman's perspective on this. I just want to be clear about that. But I will say that as a person who has ridden in a cab in New York with a salty old man cab driver, that's accurate. Like there's just like, hey, like I'm the cab driver. Tell me about your whole life. like here's my perspective on a thing you haven't even brought up yet. Like it's I don't think that's inaccurate, and I think that and I think you're right. It's very fast, and I get exactly what you're saying, but I was again like, in my limited experience in New York cabs, it did not feel inauthentic at all.
I need to go to New York and take a cab then, basically.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that everyone needs to do at least once. But yeah, it's I don't think you're wrong. But I do think it's at least a little bit authentic, is all I'm trying to say.
Okay, that's good to know.
So yeah, it's he's a very like New York character, and I do love him for that. Yeah. So how many stars are you landing on this one?
So I'm going with 3 on this one. Brilliantly directed and acted. I thought this script was okay, and I thought the story. I've seen so many two-handers in theatre, and there's definitely a formula with this kind of story that is notable, memorable when it does something different with the formula. And if you've seen this kind of thing before, you know exactly where it's going and how it's going to get there. You just don't know what the details are. But it's a very, very, very good version of that formula. Like, it's brilliantly acted, brilliantly directed, and there's lots. Once you get past that first 20, it's got a really nice flow towards the end that isn't rushed. Cannot wait to see what else this director writes and directs. And it's a lovely reminder about Sean Penn, and it's a nice thing to see Dakota Johnson not just be a Nepo baby, but be actually really intelligent and meaningful performance from her. And she's kind of reveals more towards the end, and she has a very vulnerable moment towards the end that she handles brilliantly. And so very impressed with that. So 3 stars for me.
Yeah. So for every reason you just said, 4 stars for me.
Okay.
Because as you may already know, this is a formula that works for me, and I and also again, like, I cannot wait to see this movie again, which is not something I say all that frequently. I cannot wait for. Someone's going to be in cinemas on Friday, the 28th, and I don't know if we'll get to see it, but certainly when it comes to home video, and my wife inevitably wants to watch it, I'm very much looking forward to watching it again. And for that reason alone would bump it to 4 stars for me. But it's also just really good in a genre and a format that I really resonate with. And so yeah, 4 stars. Cool. I don't know it's going to make my best of the year list, but I think it is it's certainly one of the best of the year so far. At least in terms of performance, like at least in terms of Sean Penn being like, hey, I'm still Sean Penn, and I'm great at this, you know?
Yeah, he's so good. He's so good.
So, and also, like, he's clearly a very supportive scene partner, because, like, they're clearly working together on this stuff. And I think that is in a lesser film, it would be like one great performance. One supported by the other, and this is 2 great performances supporting each other, and I think that is a great thing. So great listening. And again, like, script is treated with a level of nuance that I feel like it's, you know, I just want to see more women direct things like this, write and direct things like this. Oh, yeah. I want more women to tell these stories about women, you know? Like, it's sad that that's a refreshing take for me. Like a refreshing thing, but like, it's definitely a thing. We're getting better, but we're not there, and I think this is a great example of why we need to get there. Personally,
worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, those are our 2 movies. Go see both of them. I really want to know what our listeners feel about how I saw the TV Glow, and I'll be very interested to see how they react to this one too. But like the divide on that first one is pretty stark, so I'm curious to see how you guys feel about it. So if you see these movies, when you see these movies, please reach out. We're on all the socials at Awesome Friday CA. I'm on the socials at SmatthewAF. Simon's not on the socials because he's the smartest of the 2 of us. So good. So you can also reach us via our website. Simon is temporarypen.com. Mine is stretched.ca. And the show is awesomefriday.ca. If you have enjoyed the show, you can also leave comments on most podcasting platforms, but you can listen to us on all of them. And whatever one you're listening to us on, please feel free to do the things that would give us the most support. And those things are: hit the subscribe button, give us a 5-star review, and share the show with your friends, because we would love. Those are the things that are going to get us in front of more earballs, and those are the things that help immensely. If you would like to support us more directly, we do have a Patreon, and every week you get a bonus show. This week we talked about our favorite first features from directors. And what was your question? I can't remember off the top of my. I've lost your question in my brain.
Movies that would make great PS3 video game adaptations.
Right, classics, AA video game adaptations of movies that we would like to see. And you can, every paid supporter gets access to the bonus show, and paid support starts at just $2 Canadian per month. So it seems that is not even a quarter of the price of a cup of coffee at this point in Canada. So please go do that. Last but not least, we are here in Vancouver on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. And thank you so much for listening and for joining us on this Awesome Friday.
Bye.